Welcome to today's video. We're exploring when immigration agents can arrest without a warrant, and how the Constitution's protections stand up against the convenience of rapid enforcement. We'll walk through standards like probable cause, immediate risk, and the role of warrants outside border zones and in private dwellings. Let's begin by outlining what you'll learn. Here's our roadmap. First, we define the big question. Next, we cover the constitutional basics. Then we examine when warrantless arrests may be allowed. After that, we weigh checks on power against practical enforcement needs. We will also cover what to do if you are approached by agents, followed by a quick quiz to test your understanding, and we finish by explaining why this issue affects everyone. The central issue is whether immigration agents can skip warrants for civil arrests simply for the sake of convenience, especially when far from the border, or when entering private dwellings. The short answer is no. Not without meeting strict conditions. Now let's ground that answer in constitutional basics. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable seizures, which generally means warrants are required for arrests. Immigration arrests are civil in nature, but that does not nullify constitutional safeguards. Courts have increasingly made clear that the convenience of enforcement cannot override these protections. The key term is reasonableness, and outside of border contexts or exigent circumstances, agents typically need either a judicial warrant or must meet narrow exceptions. This flowchart visualizes the decision-making process for agents. First, it checks whether the encounter is at or near the border, where different rules can apply. Next, it considers whether the location is a private dwelling, which generally requires a warrant absent consent or exigent circumstances. The chart then asks whether there is probable cause that the person is removable. If not, the process stops. If yes, it asks whether there is an immediate risk of flight or danger, and whether less intrusive means have been exhausted. If there are exigent circumstances, an immediate arrest may be justified. If not, the recommended path is to obtain a warrant. The outcome nodes clarify when to proceed without a warrant, when to seek one, and when not to arrest. Here are the core standards. First, probable cause requires specific, articulable facts that a person is removable. A hunch is insufficient. Second, to bypass a warrant, there must be an immediate risk of flight or danger, something time-sensitive or safety-related. Third, entering a private dwelling generally requires a judicial warrant or valid consent. Exigent circumstances can be a narrow exception. Fourth, courts increasingly expect agents to demonstrate that less intrusive means have been attempted or are impracticable before circumventing the warrant process. On one side, critics argue that enforcement requires speed and flexibility because targets can quickly disappear and warrants may slow operations. On the other side, rights-focused perspectives emphasize that convenience cannot override constitutional requirements. They argue that procedural safeguards prevent arbitrary detentions, and that agents must either demonstrate a real emergency or obtain a warrant, thereby legitimizing enforcement and protecting civil liberties. This table contrasts civil immigration arrests with criminal arrests. Civil arrests aim at removal and detention, while criminal arrests aim at prosecution and punishment. Both generally require probable cause, and home entry usually requires a warrant or valid consent unless exigent circumstances apply. Later proceedings differ. Immigration uses civil standards, while criminal trials require proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The justifications for bypassing a warrant are narrow and typically tied to immediate risks or exigencies. Here are general, educational tips. Remain calm and ask if you are free to leave. If the answer is yes, depart calmly. Ask for identification and the reason for the stop. Do not consent to entry into your home without a warrant and request to see it. You may remain silent and ask to speak with a lawyer. Document the encounter details, including names, badge numbers, time, and location. If it is safe and lawful in your jurisdiction, consider recording the encounter. This is informational and not legal advice. Quiz time. The question asks what is generally required away from the border and outside a private dwelling for a warrantless civil immigration arrest to be reasonable. Option A is a strong hunch. Option B is probable cause plus immediate risk. Option C is good faith belief about delay. And option D is an uncorroborated anonymous tip. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is B. Courts generally require probable cause that the person is removable and a credible, immediate risk of flight or danger to justify a warrantless civil arrest in the interior. This standard exceeds mere convenience and requires specific, articulable facts. This timeline shows the typical sequence. First is initial observation, followed by identification and questioning. Next, agents assess probable cause of removability. They then evaluate immediate risk of flight or danger. The process includes considering whether less intrusive means are available. If there is no exigency, the next step is to prepare and seek a judicial warrant. Finally, they either execute the warrant or disengage if the legal basis is insufficient. Private dwelling entry typically requires a warrant or valid consent, which should be confirmed before entry. This matters broadly because limitations on warrantless arrests protect privacy and due process for all people within the United States. These limits reinforce the principle that the government must follow the law, rather than define it on the fly. The precedents set in immigration contexts influence how other federal agencies conduct seizures and arrests. Recent judicial decisions are drawing firmer lines, making clear that convenience alone does not justify bypassing warrants. Agents are expected to demonstrate that less intrusive measures have been attempted, or that real emergencies exist. Private homes remain among the most protected spaces under the Fourth Amendment. The second quiz asks, what is typically required for immigration agents to enter a private dwelling for a civil arrest? Option A is simply presenting a badge. Option B is valid consent or a judicial warrant absent exigent circumstances. Option C is an internal memo. And option D is a neighbor's complaint. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is B. Entry into a private dwelling for a civil arrest generally requires valid consent or a judicial warrant, unless there are exigent circumstances. Homes receive strong constitutional protection. Here are the key takeaways. Probable cause requires more than a hunch. Immediate risk of flight or danger is a narrow gateway, not a shortcut around the warrant requirement. Private homes are highly protected, and the default is warrant or valid consent. Courts are reinforcing these safeguards to prevent governmental overreach. To summarize, warrants are the default rule, and exceptions demand strict, fact-specific justification. The civil nature of immigration enforcement does not eliminate Fourth Amendment protections. Judicial oversight preserves the balance between effective enforcement and individual liberty. This is an educational overview and not legal advice. Laws and precedents may vary by jurisdiction and can change over time. For advice about a specific situation, consult a qualified attorney. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, please like the video, share it, and subscribe for more content. Let us know in the comments whether you think the courts have drawn the line in the right place and what questions you still have.